I'll tell you one story to illustrate the craziness. So it was a time when gold was going up. Gold had been you couldn't buy or sell gold, and finally you could, and the price was rising, and it was rising, and we had a deal where Lenny Baum and I, where we'd each have our own account. I was the boss, but we each had our own account, and in our own account, in fact, we both bought gold. We're supposed to be independent, but we both liked gold. The gold was going up. It started at $200 and $300 and $400, $500. It got to $500, which by today's standards would be like $1,500 or $1,800. And I said, this is a very high price. I'm getting out. And I sold my half. But Lenny, I think you should. No, you don't know how high this is going to go. You can't. This is going to go very, very high. I said, okay. So he stayed. It was $600. It was $700. It was $800. It got to $800. That day, I happened to be talking to a friend of mine on the phone who was a stockbroker. And in fact, he was my stockbroker. And I said, how are things, Dick? And he said, oh, well, they're fine. This morning, my wife, Lucy, came into my closet and cleaned out all of my old tie clasps and cufflinks and went downtown to sell them. They were gold. See? I said, well, you having a hard time in your family? Why is she? So your wife said, oh, he says, she's a jeweler. I said, yes, I know that. So he said, so she only has to stand in the short line. I said, what do you mean, the short line? He says, don't you know that people are lining up and standing for hours selling their gold? I said, no, I didn't know that. Thank you very much. We had a phone in those days. If you picked it up, it was a different phone. If you picked it up, you went right to the floor of the commodity exchange. And I got Lenny in the office, and I put the phone up to his ear, and I said, Lenny, sell the gold. In fact, and he said, no. I said, Lenny, I'm the boss. Sell the blankety blank gold. I was more emphatic than that. He said, all right. So he sold the gold. Maybe it was $810. Oh, but he was mad. And the next day, we came in, and it opened at $830. And he said, I told you. By the end of that day, it had dropped 25%. It was down to $600, all in one day. And it never, of course, went back up. So that is an example of common sense and very good luck. Good luck. If I hadn't called my stockbroker the day I did, Lenny would have held on to that gold. It went back to 200 after a while. We would have ridden it all the way down, I think. And so it was just plain luck that I have. But it was at least common sense that I thought if everyone in the world is trying to sell their gold, how long can it be going up? There is such a thing as supply and demand. So there it was. So that was what it was like to be a fundamental trader. It was stomach-wrenching. So